All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the AAPEX webinar series. My name is Kelly Denman, and I'm with AAPEX Event Management. The webinar series will host one webinar per month leading up to our in-person event in Las Vegas. AAPEX will take place at the Venetian Expo and Caesars Forum from Tuesday, November 5th through Thursday, November 7th, 2024. In preparation for the event, be sure to visit apexshow.com. As a friendly reminder, attendees' mics will be muted for the duration of this webinar. There will be a Q&A portion throughout the entire webinar, so please submit any questions you may have through the chat function. This webinar will also be recorded and available on apexshow.com later this week. Today's webinar is what the automotive aftermarket supply chain can learn from shops and how the industry can provide shops what they need to succeed. So without furthermore, I would like to introduce Ben Johnson, Vice President at Repairify. Ben, take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Kelly. Hey, and thanks for everybody that's chimed in, and a special thanks for our panel who are taking time out of their busy days at their own shops to share their thoughts on this topic. So, what we really want to understand from you guys today is, what the automotive supply chain, the aftermarket supply chain can do, can learn from you guys, and how the industry at large, and especially the supply chain, can provide shops what they need to succeed. So I was honored to be asked to moderate this panel because it's kind of near and dear to my heart. For everybody on the webinar, these folks are kind of they're representing all the other shops as the front line. They're the ones that throw away the parts boxes, that deal with managing customer expectations and fulfilling their customers' expectation, that in most cases they bring this very sophisticated consumer device to them and they get it back the same day or maybe the next day. We were talking earlier, and I can't get that kind of service in my dishwasher, which is infinitely more simple than a modern vehicle. So really appreciate everybody taking the time today. As Kelly said, we'll be kind of watching questions come in, and we'll try to sparse those out throughout, and we'll try to make a few minutes at the very end to deal with anything we didn't get to. So what I'd like to start with is just giving each of our panelists the floor for a couple of minutes. You can introduce yourselves. We got Bill from Detroit, and Tara from Wisconsin, and Jose from Maryland, and just give us a quick 2-minute summary of what your thoughts are, immediate thoughts about what the supplier community can do to help you partner with you to bring this experience and maintain this commitment that we've made to our industry. So with that, ladies first, I'll let Tara start us off.
Thank you, Ben. I have really two major focuses for that question about how they can help us as shop owners. The first one is talking to some other shop owners and recognizing that there are still shortages and that we're at a very unique time with vehicles being on the road longer. So we're pushing up to 13 years on average. I think it's 12.6 right now. But we also have all this new technology that we're dealing with and getting into and learning and understanding more about, and being able to get those parts especially for the older vehicles while dealers are discontinuing as they no longer need them. And to be able to find those in the market is getting more and more difficult. And then in addition, just being able to trust and know that the new technology, the new modules, the new components, the new ADAS cameras, that those are going to do as great of a job for us as OE is very important. So being able to get that. And then my other part of it is just that communication is a really big component as well to what is important to us. We, I think there's a lot of changes from manufacturer to distribution. There's a lot of, takeovers happening. There's a lot of selling out. There's a lot of change happening all the time within the market. And a lot of that is not really communicated to us. So we don't always know exactly who is making the part in the box or who is even distributing it to us. So, and even as organizations change. So sometimes the way that they do their sales force might change, or, it might be a private owned parts store that got bought out by the company. And that isn't always happening the best to be able to help us understand understand who exactly we're dealing with and form that relationship. I think even within our own organizations, getting the right information to the right people. Most of us shop owners are not just sitting here waiting for salespeople to walk into us and present to us. We're all very busy people, and we want to be able to have our time respected, and that means treating us as individuals according to our needs.
Oh, very good. Thanks. I think we could spend an hour easily on the subjects you'd already talked about. Jose, you want to follow up with that? You got a big act to follow there.
Yeah, ditto. Actually, Tara, you covered a lot of territory there. Um, what I'm looking for is value from my part supplier and value in training, education. It's one of the ways that we were able to expand our organization, and that kind of training and education for our technicians and for our service advisors is key to our success. So we're looking at a strong partnership with a parts supplier. And in regards to that relationship to service, the quality of service that they deliver, that being delivery time, of course, which really, matters a lot to us. It affects our efficiency. When you think about a dealership and how it operates in-house, they have created this perfect environment for the technician where their parts department is just a few steps away. So, we were always shooting for 120% efficiency as technicians go. But, in our case, in the aftermarket, we're looking at a facility that's 10, 15, 20 minutes away. That directly affects the performance of our shop. So we're looking at a competent service, high competency rate parts partner to accommodate us, who will hot shop that part out when we need it. It helps us stay agile, keeping our customers satisfied. So what
Yeah.
I'm looking for is practicalities here that mean so much on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a common theme going on here, and you talk about not only keeping your customers happy, but keeping the work flowing through your shop, which just makes your techs more money, you more money, and the customer happier. It's a win-win-win, right?
Yes, and it really is a true partnership when you find that relationship, that parts house who has the same attitude towards satisfying as you do. Well, it's magic, and we've had some great relationships, and they'll last years and years, and unfortunately relationships change, and parts houses and the way they service. Like Tara was saying, some of these places get bought out. All of a sudden, they're under new management, and the attitude is different. And we as shops have to go shopping around for a new partner. And finding that new partner can be challenging. But once you find that new partner, that facility that's going to take good care of you and your customers, and back things up with the appropriate warranty and really stand up with integrity, man, that's a partnership made in heaven.
Bill, how about what's your perspective?
Well, I'm on the road on vacation, and I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at a technical college. It was lightning behind me, and Tara and Jose stole it. So this is why it's sunny behind me right now. All the lightning's gone. Seriously though, I welcome everybody on this webinar, and I hope that we're going to be sharing some things that are going to send little dynamite bombs in your head that are going to make you think about what these relationships are in this $500 billion industry, this third largest sector in the economy. So here's a couple things for me to prime the pump with in this discussion. We service the most complicated consumer product that man has ever created, and getting more sophisticated every single day. We have to manage the most complicated machine that God has ever created, and that's becoming more complicated with every day. It's a freaking miracle that there are shops like ours thriving in an industry with all of the stuff that Tara and Jose have just mentioned, with consolidation and with the tech shortage and all that other stuff. And I hope that what we discuss here is the value of a relationship and how unimportant, how meaningless the price of something is in the context of what it costs me. We don't talk like this. We don't explain to our customers, and we don't believe it ourselves, that what I pay for something is not what it costs me. And the cost factor is in what it costs me in lack of quality and the lack of time. If you take either one of those two out far enough across that triangle, you couldn't pay me to buy the part. You couldn't give me the part for free if there's a 50-50 chance that something falls off this car as that customer is driving down the road. And yet what happens in this industry? We've got our parts people, our parts distributors are beating up the parts manufacturers for a lower price point. I don't want to belabor this now, but I just want to prime the pump. And if that's a discussion that we want to head down, I'd love to see some comments. The folks that are attending here, by all means, please chat in, because we want to talk about what you want to talk about. It's not just the four of us on this thing here. We want to find out what's driving you. And the last thing I'll say is it asking too much of me as a shop owner to expect that the relationship that I have with my parts supplier is nothing less than you making me a better shop owner? And what I will return in that for as a favor is I will make you my number one go-to person, because of the fact that we have a relationship that transcends the selling of parts. Because the ones that I don't deal with consider me an installer. Me, an installer? I beg your pardon? And so what do I call them? I call them parts delivery people. And if we talk on levels that low, and we miss the sophistication where the relationship can go, and if we can survive me almost firing them and them almost firing me, we find out that we've got a pretty good marriage. Which, by the way, this is how many marriages. Tara's working on 30 years almost, right? We're working on 30 years of marriage. That's how marriages work. That's how those relationships work. Jose, he's too young. Jose's probably been married for 4 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
Wow.
Very good. Well, as I think the audience can understand, we've got a great panel here. Tara, you said something that kind of piqued my interest. You know, you talked about better communication and things like that. And more years ago than I really want to admit, I owned a shop myself, before a lot of the technology that we have today, of course. But I was there when we were first kind of migrating from points and condenser, if somebody can remember those things, to electronic ignition, to ABS brakes, to fuel injection, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember back then, you know, as the aftermarket was starting to react with, you know, electronic HEI modules and things like that, electronic ignition and things like that, that we would get kind of, you know, I don't want to say suckered, but we get teased with these aftermarket providers that would just woo us with these great margins, and you know, and we kind of bought into these things. And to Bill's point, I think one of the things he touched on was, you know, the things would start failing way before they should have, and of course, you know, it's all on us, right? Because we picked that part to put on the car. The consumer didn't buy this and ask us to put it on. So, you know, we kind of got to the point where with some of these parts, we got spooked and we would actually start buying them just from the dealer, even though we didn't make the margins. It was worth it. I think Bill kind of touched on it too, to just eat a little bit of the margin to make sure the customer had a great experience and they'd come back for more. You know, now that these cars are so electronically complex, I'm hoping and assuming that that has somewhat settled down and that these aftermarket parts we have more confidence in them. But, you know, you touched on communication, and do you feel like the supply chain is delivering you an aftermarket electronically enhanced part that does the job at least as well as the OE part? And are they feeding you the content that you need to make you feel good about that part? How's that looking today?
I think they're doing a good job, but I think it can improve. I think it would be helpful to know. I think some of the some of our aftermarket companies that we have gotten to know are actually the OE supplier in a lot of cases. And I think that's beneficial for us to know that and to have that confidence. And then I also think it's important for us to understand what they're doing to make sure that what is in the box is going to give me the confidence. I have one goal here, and that's to fix it right the first time efficiently.
Right.
And if they can help me do that, then I will be loyal to them. And if they can't, or if I'm hearing from other shops that there are issues, it doesn't take long for us all to talk and for us all to completely blacklist a brand based on that. So, we really trust that they're getting it right the first time and that they're doing all the research on their end to make sure that it doesn't make me look like a fool or me have to spend a lot of my money to have to stand behind it with warranty or to lose a customer. A lot of times it's all about trust. And it's about trust between us and the motorist and as well between us and whoever we're working with, exactly going back to what both Bill and Jose have said.
So from your perspective, like, you know, you buy the parts, like, that Denso makes parts for a lot of the vehicles. Delphi does, Visteon, whoever it is, Bosch. You would rather see those parts coming in those boxes rather than like the branded box that some of the parts, all the parts companies seems like they have their own brands that they'll put these in, and you don't necessarily know that came from the original supplier, or whether it's another competing supplier that's reverse engineered and built it, right? So you're kind of saying you'd have the more confidence knowing that it's, if Bosch made the fuel injector, you're replacing it with a Bosch fuel injector, right? Or something like that.
Right. And having that education.
Okay. Bill, what do you think about that?
Tara said something important, as she always does. As far as these parts are concerned, I don't believe a parts supplier that says to me, we're just not going to have a problem. You're always going to, you hire us and we're always going to get you the part. I want to hear what I tell my customer. I want to hear from my parts supplier what I tell my customer. And that is, when something goes wrong, this is how we solve things, not if something is going to go wrong. I think if you're in the parts supplying business, I think it behooves you to have a plan in place, to have a structure in place that says when said part comes in and it's bad, what we do immediately is we put it on a priority call. Whatever that process is, maybe we call you and we say, how do we make this right? Or whatever it might be. Is this a situation where you need this part tomorrow morning versus, do you need it next day? And why that's important is because, again, it goes back to the relationship. If I'm a parts supplier, I want to train the shops that I do business with to explain to them what a tiered delivery system looks like. If I can get you to tell me whether you need this thing on the back of an ambulance and have it in 25 minutes, fine, so be it. And then when you need it, maybe in 2 to 4 hours, and maybe when you need it the next day. If I know I'm dealing with a top shop like Jose's or Tara's that does business that way, that knows how to schedule properly, that's got a sophisticated customer service model, maybe that's got loaner cars that buys time with, then I feel like I can go deeper with them in that relationship. Maybe it's a price incentive structure where I can say, look, because I don't need 20 trucks on the road at any given time, I can do business with 10 vehicles because I have the kinds of shops that help me to be a more efficient supplier.
Right.
And it seems to me like those are the conversations that we need to have. And more often than not, we've got people walking in the door with their specials for the week, which I'm not the person to talk to about specials. And I'm sure as hell not the person to talk to about what cores need to be picked up and all that stuff. So again, as we're having conversations at such a low level that I can commoditize who's walking in the door because they're in the parts selling business and they don't understand they're in the relationship business. And I call us as bad as anybody else. I call us we are the biggest part of this whole process. We the shop owner. We're the ones that have to translate the hieroglyphics from the technician to plain English and have to make logistics work between parts. And so we're constantly bombarded. And so I, as the shop owner, hold myself in the middle of that circus tent that's got to make this work and make it a professional experience for that customer.
Yeah, understood. Jose, anything to add?
Oh gosh, yeah, communication, communication, communication. So important for those parts houses, those organizations to communicate to us what their processes are, and we're going to follow them. All you have to do is communicate to us uh, what the structure is, and we'll get our people on board so they follow that process. Believe me, we want to make it easy for everybody to follow the process when it comes to replacing a part that isn't working quite right.
Right.
Warranty processes. How do our people contact your people and get this going through appropriately? Without wasting a whole lot of time. Just set us up. Communication was key to all of that. Getting back to the, go ahead, Bill. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
I apologize, Jose. As you're describing this, we've been at this auto repair business part, this part selling business for 50, 60, 80 years, right?
Yeah.
Amazon just showed up 10 years ago and has 1,000% easier return policy than we have with our part suppliers.
What does
Now, I
that say?
understand.
Yeah.
So, how is it that with the wherewithal, with all the part suppliers, how is it that we don't have every shop management system has an API built into the parts return part? That just blows my mind. Those are the kinds of discussions, like when we're having conversations like this, you want me to be your number one call? Show me how I can buy and return parts and warranty these parts as conveniently as possible.
I would add
The other
that.
thing too, I'm sorry, go ahead,
Go
Tara.
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
no, go right ahead, Tara, please.
I would just add that if I do have to send something back, what's the channel that it actually gets back to the manufacturer to make sure that that never happens again? And what's happening to make sure that if there is an issue, that it's getting taken off of the shelf until they get it right. Don't leave it on the shelf if you know that there's an issue. If there's a bad run of alternators or starters or something, please don't let anybody else, be selling that or have to go through the same thing that I did. But I think that communication channel needs to improve between shops and manufacturers directly, instead of having to go through all the hoops that are set up for us to have to go to our salesperson, have to go to distribution, and then wherever it goes from distribution, wherever it goes back to the plant and gets inspected, there needs to be some type of like fast pass to get that taken care of.
One of the things that through experience and being in business for many, many years, that we have learned is how to maintain agility. And if this process isn't working, if the communication hasn't happened, we're going to find another way. We're going to use another provider. We're extremely agile with our systems that we have in place. And it doesn't take much more than a phone call or jumping online and flipping a switch, and we're going to get it done because we want to satisfy our customers. So we need a part supplier, a partner who's going to have that same attitude, who's going to be able to jump through those hoops as we do. So getting back to the core question, though, when it comes to electronics, I have a question for the part supplier community out there. How do you do your research, your R&D when developing these new sophisticated modules? What is your success rate when it comes to producing the new components needed to fix these vehicles? I've had personal experiences in the past where some of the systems that the part suppliers put out were very good, robust. They were dependable, and then I've had some that, as Tara mentioned earlier, that were just so bad you blacklisted them. So I'm curious, what sort of R&D, what sort of reverse engineering process do you guys do?
And Jose, to your what you had mentioned in our meeting that we had not long ago, also like what is the average life of that part, so that we can even start maybe doing some predictive, selling or really helping educate our customers on what is the average life of an alternator, what is the average life of, an ignition coil, and give us that information. We want that information so that we can educate the people that are driving the cars.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of something else here. I don't know what your attitudes are in regards to rebuilt components, and I'm going to pick on AC compressors. Ben, you probably know where I'm going with this. When it comes to an AC compressor, it's not cheap, right? So, what am I hanging on a car? What am I replacing a bad compressor with? It's going to be a new unit because rebuilt compressors largely fail on the on a larger scale. I mean, I've had one that left me 3 hours away from home. I had to get the vehicle towed and a boat towed back home because of a remanufactured compressor. How good are the remanufacturing facilities and processes on your end as well? And will will they ever be able to give me the confidence to use them again? Half shafts, that's the other thing too. So I'm sort of asking our community out there some questions in regards to quality of rebuilt components.
And these are great. And I see a common theme, communications, and I think Bill touched on it, and I think this conversation just cemented it, is not only how do you get the parts to me, but what do you do when things go wrong? Because it's not an if, right? It's a when, and how do you deal with that? And it's funny, as you were talking, we're kind of picking on the aftermarket right now, but same thing happens in the OE supply chain, right? I mean, I've heard a lot of stories about, like, even ECUs and things on new cars during the COVID years of production. They seem to be having a lot more problems than they have ever had. I mean, you think they'd have that down to a science by now, but so they've got to be asking their suppliers, the same things. And as Tara, as you mentioned earlier, we think we have higher confidence getting the part in the box that was the same supplier that made it for the OE, but that's not always true, right? Sometimes, once in a while, the aftermarket actually sees a engineered in flaw and kind of works around it and comes up with a better solution. So it's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting paradigm, and the communications around how that happens and what they do when they do get a bad run. How are you assured that, hey, this alternator was bad, the next one off the shelf, isn't going to be the same? Because if not, as Jose said, you're just going to blacklist them and go somewhere else. Bill, you were
Yeah.
trying to get a
The,
word in.
yeah. Jose reminded me of something. I think to myself about it's not that I'm bailing out the parts manufacturers in this, but it goes back to, I think, are we ready for that kind of a situation? In the case that Jose's talking about, let's just say for the sake of argument, this is a vehicle that's maybe the compressor is not available brand new anymore. And it may be, let's say, 20 years old. And in that situation, are we adjusting our parts margin and our labor margin to reflect the higher risk that's associated with selling this part? And by the way, are we adjusting our warranty? And in many cases, me guilty is charged as well. We don't. We just sort of think, okay, let's see if something happens, and something does happen, and we're like, oh, this is the last time. I will never do this again, and yeah, I won't do this again until the next time this happens. And it goes back to, I guess, what we're talking about here is we got to make adjustments. We've got to explain to this customer that I often use analogies about appliances. There's a reason why that 30-year refrigerator that might be in our kitchen or in our building, in our shop, lasts longer than the stuff that the $2,500 refrigerator that you might install that's got Wi-Fi connection and a back scrubber, for a shower or something like that. We don't make things to last like they used to. And I think it requires us to explain to that customer, very much like a doctor does in an office. They never promise anything. All they say is, this is what we think we're going to be doing. Nobody's diagnosing anything. We're going to be testing. The test revealed that you need a compressor. Once we replace the compressor, we hope that I don't anticipate there being any other work necessary, but time will tell because it is a remanufactured compressor and they're not as reliable as brand new ones. And the reason we have to go with a remanufactured one is because a brand new one is not available. Do we want to do this or not? And if the customer says yes, we go forward. If they don't, they're driving down the road with a boat with the windows down.
That's good, Bill. Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about a remanufacturer that does an excellent job, and I know I mentioned this before in our previous discussion. Jasper Remanufacturing of engines and transmissions. Here is a company that has it's basically a machine shop organization that has taken an OEM part that has failed, and let's say that OEM part has a chronic problem with it. There are some transmissions that GM had drum problems with. What Jasper does is they'll bolster up that component, they'll improve it, they'll make it better than it
Right.
was originally, and they'll place a 3-year, 100,000-mile warranty behind it. Well, they stand behind their products 110%. A supplier like that for an organization like mine is a godsend. We're going to stand by that organization. We're going to use those products. That's a great example of a remanufacturer that goes beyond the norm and does it exceedingly well. And we sell Jasper left and right because of it.
And Jose, what you were talking about is the recovery. This is a supplier who knows we're going to have a problem, and the way we respond in kind is to provide that customer service support that makes this customer happy. And I don't know how to solve, we'll never have a problem with you, Mr. Customer, other than to just, again, be honest and say, this is what we do when we have a problem. Prepare yourself, Mr. Customer. We're going to be doing a bunch of business together. One of these days, we're going to end up failing you. And I need you to be comfortable enough with me, Jose and Tara, to let me know when I don't meet the standard. Because we have thousands of people working at this company. And so I need you to let me know. Because if you don't let me know, you, my great customer, if you don't let me know when I'm not doing my job that day after years of us being in a relationship, who the hell is going to tell me that? I need
Right.
you to tell me that. And so when we create those kinds of expectations from those best customers, they're the people that are singing your praises all over town at that point. And I consider myself the same way with Jasper. The first time we ever did a job with them, they sent me the check before the replacement motor came in for the warranty. And I thought, wow, I've never seen that before. And I've been their
Above
customer
board.
ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, above
I
board.
think,
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
and as much as people think that we're selling parts, obviously the cars need the parts, but we're really selling peace of mind.
Yes.
And it really comes down to that. And I think if the manufacturers, if the distributors, if people, if the whole channel understood that, things would be a lot better because they would take a lot more time, less time and money marketing, and more time and money just making a great product.
Not only that, too, when you're dealing with a company like Jasper, it instills confidence. And we're not talking about cheap components here. We're not talking about a brake job here. We're talking about thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
And it's easier for us to convey that news to a customer, having that confidence to stand behind that huge job. They're paying four, five, six, $10,000 in some cases to have a vehicle repaired. But you can do it with confidence, and that makes a huge difference
Yeah.
because you
Right.
have you have a supplier that's going to stand behind it.
I
So
would
here's an
argue that brakes
interesting,
are pretty important too, though. Like
here's an
not working is
interesting
not a thing either.
question. We actually got a question in from the audience that, so this will be a little bit of a debate, I think, because we're talking about, obviously, we're on the fence of, on the side of the fence of saying we value versus just cost. And the question that came in is, I run into a lot of shops who say their customers want the cheapest parts. How do you, as a shop owner, combat the cheap customers dictating where you buy? So, Jose, you want to kick that one off?
Well, we build value into every repair. And we build value by sort of what Jasper does. We stand behind our service, our repair. And we do that with a 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty. Sure, you're paying a little bit more when you come to Dynamic Automotive, but it is well worth it to have what Tara said, that peace of mind. If you go down the road and you break down and we worked on that car, we're towing that car back. We're we're going to take care of it, and that instills confidence in our clientele. So it's easier for us to sell a job and at a higher rate even because we build a lot of value surrounding that job.
So
Bill, looks like you want to say something.
I'm coming out of my clothes here. This is one of my things here. So Jose, I love you to death. I don't think you're being specific enough when you say build value. Let me explain what I mean by that. So years ago, our favorite supplier, Tara and I's favorite supplier in the Great Lakes area, Autowares, invited a bunch of shop owners to get together, and I had a privilege of speaking for about 5 minutes. So I said to the room, I said, who here is proud to be the most expensive guy in their neighborhood? And every one of us, and they were all men, shamefully, Tara, there was not a single woman in the room. Every one of the guys like me raises their hand, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, why do you guys think you're the most expensive guy in town? He goes, well, because my prices are higher than everybody else's. I said, well, my prices are higher than everybody else's is also, but I'm the cheapest in town. And they're like, how can that be? How can that be? How can that not be? How can me doing something one time, how can me buying the part one time, installing it one time, charging for it one time, and not having to warranty it? How is that not the cheapest way to do business? Even Mother Nature loves it because there's not a 3-4 compressors that have to go in the ground at the warehouse that the manufacturer never sees. That just goes to become scrap metal. So I beg to differ here. If you're doing good work for good money, you are the cheapest in town. And that's the problem in this industry. Most of us don't believe that we're the cheapest option for this customer. What is wrong with us?
Bill, you're 110% right. You
Do
really
good
are.
work. Do good work. When that customer says, what's the cheapest way to do this? I already got it. I got this. This is how we're going to do this. We're going to install this brand new part. We're going to do this with a 3 or 36,000 mile warranty. We got a free loaner car for you. We've been in business, in Tara's case, 80 some years in business. Are you
76.
freaking kidding? 76. I'm adding some here. But
Don't I look great?
you got, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you can't just buy that. You can't just open a shop next door and do that. You've got to have legacy. And it just we don't even think about it. We allow the customer to take on this moral high ground. And it's the exact same thing that happens at AAPEX. When the buyers are beating up the parts manufacturers because they don't think they can sell the $12 rotor, we need a $9 rotor. For the love of God, if you're a parts supplier and you hear somebody, a buyer, talking to you like this, please call me because I want to talk to that. I want to talk to that buyer. I want to explain to that person what the downstream effect is when that part shows up in the supply chain. And what happens is it doesn't just affect the shop or the customer. The technician that loses confidence in that part may no longer work at said facility because he doesn't believe that the salespeople are capable of selling a customer a premium service experience. And that's the only way I think we're going to get past this rough road in the economy here for the next, I don't know, year, 2 years. I don't know how long this bump in the road is going to be. So we got to get our heads straight about us being the cheapest option for that customer today.
I'm going to add something real quick and I'll try to be as concise as possible and just say that sometimes it is best for a client that it is the least expensive option. But that comes down to us knowing what the plan is for that vehicle and how that vehicle is being used. Sometimes people need to get to work and they can't even, barely afford the brake job. So in that case, it is kind of our duty to offer a good, better, and best and to help them understand what the difference is between all three. So I can't say that I'm always going to sell, the top, the absolute best of anything, but I am going to understand the needs of my client and I'm going to make sure that whatever I'm offering them is going to match up with that and that they understand what the longevity is and what their decision that they're making and why they're making it.
That type of agility that you just demonstrated, Tara, is one of the reasons why you're probably so successful and why people keep coming back to you because you offer them those options that are so very important.
Yeah, and I think the trick, as you said, is you make sure that they understand what expectation they can have. Like if you want this good, then this is what you can expect. If you want to spend a little more, you're going to expect better. But if you really don't use the car like that, then maybe the good's okay, right? So, but they have all eyes open. I think where you got a real problem is when you sell the good as the best, just on a price, and that's when you get yourself in trouble pretty quickly, right?
And I think you have an ethical issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And I
hey,
think
real
I
quick,
was going to Oh,
sorry.
Ben, I just wanted to clarify what Tara's point is valid. Where I want to clarify this is if you're somebody who installs used parts, used transmissions and engines, and you wonder why or you think you're making money, but you're really not, because I don't know, 30% of them have to be warrantied out, or you've lost customers that have been your customers for 20 years because they were in trouble and you thought you could help them with making this thing, half the price. We'll do half the quality of the engine for half the price. And 30 days later, they've got nothing to show for it. Now you've lost a customer in the process. That's sort of what I'm cautioning us. I prefer to make enough money to be able to provide a customer with a 50% discount on a repair because I can afford to do that. I would rather do that to somebody that needs the help. I'd rather do that in charity rather than jump into the transactional mud pit, the quicksand, where they're halfway in, and rather than us pulling them out, we jump in trying to save them, and we find ourselves in that mess. And it's who among us hasn't dealt with that? Sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot. I still do that now after 35 years of doing this for a living. But that's sort of the distinction that I'm trying to make. But Tara's point is absolutely valid. Yeah, we do that as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Um, Real quickly, I've got another question from the audience, and I'm going to kind of blend it in with a question that I had anyway. And I think I'm going to start with Tara with this one. So as we discussed earlier, kind of the confidence in ordering parts. I remember when I was in business, some of my best relationships, and I think we've talked about it here a little bit, were with specific parts counter people that, they were knowledgeable. We could lean on them. I could say, hey, I'm pretty sure I diagnosed this funky electronic part. Are you selling many of them? Is this something that's common, or, do you never sell it? Because I might have to go back and look again. Um, now, today, as we're kind of driving efficiencies into our shop and our operations, we're moving more and more into using the electronic catalogs that are sometimes integrated with our shop management systems or what have you. And we're looking that up. Do you find that you still are your parts supplier relationships still tied to the counterman and your confidence in them? Or are you more looking to the electronic catalog solutions? And if so, are you finding that you're getting the enough information in those parts catalogs to make you confident in understanding, again, Tara, like you were talking about, based on the customer's use of the vehicle, which one you really want to recommend?
Mhm. I think there is a lot of information and more in our parts cataloging systems, whether we're going through what other electronic system we're using to go through our shop management system. But it's an interesting question because I'm actually going to say, I mean, yes, where we're really missing out on, where a lot of people are really missing out on, and this is a big soapbox that I'm on often, is on the delivery driver. Because I spend way more time with my delivery drivers than I do with my counter people anymore. And there are a lot of very unhappy delivery drivers, and they tell me a lot about who they're working for. And I think that there needs to be a lot more investment made in that. And there also needs to be more training because they really leave the delivery driver to come into my shop and ultimately leave it up to me to train them where it goes in my shop and how I want things done in my shop. That really should be on them. They should know how things are done. And when a new person comes in, they should get trained and not leave it up to me to do that.
Very interesting. Jose, anything to add to that?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to parts parts personnel, I come from the analog age, and yeah, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
That's where I got my start, analog, where we were overhauling and fixing things, and the parts guy, aces and pies were largely in his head. That's where the database was. He dreamt numbers at night because he dealt with so many numbers. And over the years, of course, we've gotten away from that. although I still value the knowledge that a good old parts guy or gal has, and they're still out there. I mean, some folks are entrenched in this still, and they really they live it, they breathe it, they eat it, and those guys I value incredibly, and they've been nurtured by their environment, and they've been educated. And as Tara said, we need more education out there on the parts side. We need to talk to folks who really enjoy what they're doing on the parts supply side and who know their products very well. They're out there. They still are. Now we've gone into the digital age, right?
Right.
So now we're dealing with a lot of nice programs that really help our efficiency in our shop. I can just go into my catalog. I can shop several different vendors if I need to. I can click a button and boom, that part is at my location, and we're getting to fix that car quicker than ever. That parts driver though, that parts driver, as Tara said, is so very important. That's my connection with that part house.
Hmm.
And sometimes I see subcontractor parts, DoorDash parts drivers at it. They just don't have a clue and don't even know how to enter the facility appropriately. Be mindful about your first impression when you're delivering parts to our facilities. We pride ourselves on being very professional and servicing our customers appropriately. You should do the same with how you contact us through your drivers. So that's a great point, Tara.
Interesting. Bill, I'm sure you've got something to say on the
Um,
matter.
at risk of complimenting Tara one more time, my sister, my wonderful industry sister, this is why women are so important in our industry. Because they can smell the stank, STANK, not just in person when somebody is representing our brand improperly. They listen to this on the phone. They can hear in the first 5 seconds whether the person who's representing our brand actually wants to be there that day. And we spend all this time and energy to drive that phone to ring. And look who we've got. And no sooner do I hear what you guys are talking about, do I think to myself, when do I have my people front facing a customer that are in a way that I would not want the customer to see that. The conversations, the customer you're walking through the shop. Are there any inappropriate calendars laying around? Is there inappropriate music blasted through the shop? What's the environment like? Those are all important things. Those are the kinds of things that make it or break it for a customer. It sure as hell isn't the price, people. I mean, we all know this. I mean, I hate to say this again, but every time I hear somebody talk about price, you got to give me a break here. We've got to be talking about things that are actually meaningful here.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Hey, so believe it or not, we're like 10 minutes, 12 minutes away here. So I wanted to just kind of key in on one other element, talking about again how the supply chain can help you guys, can partner with you guys better to deliver on all the things that you do. Jose, I know that you and Dynamic invest a lot of time in keeping your techs trained. Do you feel like, especially with all these electronically enhanced components we're seeing on the vehicles now, are they doing enough, or could they do more to make sure that they keep the level of training available for the aftermarket, for understanding, what these parts are, how these parts work? I know in my world, if I don't understand how it's supposed to work, then it's hard for me to figure out why it's not working that way. Any thoughts on how they're doing as far as keeping you guys with the information and training that you need to diagnose these things properly and make sure you're putting the right part on?
Education is really one of our most important components. So much so that we've involved ourselves over the years with local high schools and community colleges. We have a youth apprenticeship program that goes from the junior year to the senior year. And if we have an apprentice who wants to continue their education in our field, we will put them through a 3-year apprenticeship program, a Maryland registered apprenticeship program. And that'll go through either Montgomery College or Catonsville Community College. These are just two very strong community colleges in our area with automotive programs. And at the end of their tenure, they have just about enough credits to receive an associate's degree in applied science. And usually they're graduating as master technicians. And let me tell you that the effect is profound. Over the years in our industry, we found out that technicians are aging out. And I know most in this room know that the average age of a technician in a shop is 56 years old. We're aging out. I'm a little bit older than that. And the educational component has really affected us as an organization. At Dynamic Automotive, at all of the locations, the average age of a technician is 28. So the impact has truly been profound. And, we're talking about guys and gals who really want to be in this industry. And the education continues after school. We become lifelong learners. We have to. This industry is moving at light speed with its technology. So we need the very best training out there. And most of the parts houses and organizations in the Washington metropolitan area do cater to us in a very good manner with good local training, but we don't stop there. We send at least half a dozen to a dozen of our techs, our service advisors, of our location leaders to Vision, to AAPEX SEMA, to ASTE, to STX. We don't stop. So education is really a key to our success, and it helps us better serve our communities across the board.
Good to know. Tara, anything to add?
I would just add that it's important for the manufacturers or the distributors, whoever is giving the information, for them to know if it's something having to do with, removing and replacing or installing a part. That's important to get over to the technicians. I would also say that it's equally as important to get any information about the part itself, the quality, about maybe even the system that it applies to service advisors. The majority of our shops now are going to more of a technician with a service advisor type platform. I know a lot of smaller independent shops maybe don't have that, and then maybe that's just, a person or two. The technician is a service advisor, and that's okay. But I just think as our aftermarket evolves into more service based, that the people who are giving the service are also getting the training.
And Bill, bring us home on that one.
Well, I guess I'll do some name dropping about some training here. We utilize, so we're fortunate, Tara and I are part of the AutoWares distribution network under the Auto Value Bumper to Bumper line, and we just recently, Tara still on the Service Advisory Council, and one of the things that they've just offered is a subscription through AVI online training. And that is such a convenient way to deliver training. And then the other one is today's class, which they provide you about 4 or 5 questions a day. And it's a really great way to deliver training every day, little bits and pieces. And we have both of them at this point. But the other thing that I wanted to chime in on with regarding the training is, am I the shop owner going to training? And if I don't, isn't it fair for the service advisor and for the technician to say, oh, Bill's on vacation and does this and that. Does he feel like he doesn't need to go to training? And if he doesn't, why the hell should I? So I put this right back to where we started this discussion here. We as the shop owners are the facilitators to all things back and forth. We're the center of that hub, whatever you want to call us, or whatever analogy you want to use. We are responsible to facilitate. We own a repair facility. We facilitate these relationships. And so you, Mr. Shop Owner, Miss Shop Owner, become proficient at doing your part. Be the example in training, in customer service, in respecting your competitor down the street. We have a huge pool of talent that we're working with that's aging. And if we don't raise this next generation the way we were raised, we think we have problems now. Wait another 5 years. On a light note.
Very good. Hey, I've got one more question I'm going to try to sneak in. And this may or may not be really, I mean, I think supply chain can play a part in this, but I'm just really curious what your thoughts are. You know, one of the things that I hear a lot about shops is that the consumer is very wary. They buy these electronically enhanced vehicles. They've got front radars and side cameras and rear sensors and things like that. They don't understand when they buy that. Certainly, they're not told at the time of sale that these things are going to be more expensive to maintain when you just do there's no such thing anymore as a $120 wheel alignment, right? Because you change the thrust angle, you're doing calibrations and things like that. I'm hearing from a lot of shops that the consumer is very wary when they come in and they're trying to be sold these services because they just feel like, hey, wait a minute, you're now trying to sell me something I've never even heard of before. This is like the old, replace the muffler bearing, right? I know you guys are just the messengers. You're the ones that are on the front lines having to communicate this news sometimes for the first time. Is there any way that the supplier community and perhaps the industry as a whole could help that education process to where the consumer may not be all that happy about it, but at least it's not the first time they've heard about it when they show up at your door and you're trying to educate them on what's needed? And I'll start with Jose this time. Any thoughts on that, Jose?
I know at the shop level, we are educating every customer that comes in the door and telling them about these new products that are out there that are part of their vehicle. And getting back to what Tara started out with, communication. And in our case, it is a face-to-face, usually one-on-one communication. Of course, we also communicate to our part suppliers, what's going on with the vehicle and get opinions from them. How do they communicate to their public? And I'm just wondering what they're doing at the retail counter, communicating to their customer. What products are so sophisticated that they're going to need an education on installing it, because you still got DIYers out there, do-it-yourselfers, who are going to be installing these sophisticated components on a vehicle, not knowing that they have to calibrate these components on that particular vehicle, or taking somebody like me to calibrate it. How are they communicating it to their public? So that's another question I have for them.
Good question. Bill, anything to add to that?
Is it any wonder that we have an industry that is hyper-focused on fixing broken things? And am I the only one to notice that there's another industry called the medical industry that by and large fixes broken people? Very little is spent on maintenance. And last time I checked, that industry is sort of collapsing onto itself. They can't keep up, right? It's a crisis. And we have a similar crisis, and that is that we go through, on any given week, it's this or that and this and that. 90% of shops out there are dealing with that because things are volatile out there. And by and large, I think I put that at the place of the fact that we are as an industry, we haven't trained the customer to appreciate the value of maintenance, of taking care of your car. Many people don't take care of themselves. They take care of their car better than they take care of themselves. And we're still in the crisis that we're in. So it seems to me like one of the things that we can do is we put out to me, the tagline could be, it's cheaper to keep her, right? It's cheaper to keep her because we have an aging vehicle that's less expensive. And when we're talking to that customer about, well, I'm not spending $2,500 on the car, I'm just going to go ahead and replace it. Are we having a conversation about not just the car payment and the higher interest rate, but what the the relative insurance costs are of that vehicle. A 5-mile-an-hour bumper hit on a, I don't know, 92 Impala is 12 cents. You do that on a brand new Chevy with all of the stuff that's on it. It's $2,000 worth of damage on a vehicle. Are we explaining this? Are we explaining this cost of repair is much higher as a result of replacing this new car, and why we want to encourage you to keep her rather than replace her? I think we need to work on that tagline. Somebody
With the
else
end
needs to
of this
work on
all
the
popped
tagline.
up, I think the virtual hook is being applied to our necks collectively. So real quick, Tara, sorry I didn't get to let you chime in on that one. I do want to just take a quick second to thank all of you guys again, and thank everybody that tied in to listen to us banter about this for an hour. Hopefully it was educational. I heard some common themes. Better communication never hurts. A good plan for how you take care of your customers is critical for the supply chain to get engaged with. And these shops that are on this panel and many thousands of more are willing to partner with you if you can deliver the level of service that they can help provide their level of service to their own customers. And Kelly, anything to wrap us up?
Well, couldn't have said it better myself, Ben, but on behalf of Apex, Ben, Bill, Tara, Jose, thank you so much for your time today. And what an incredible way to start our first Apex webinar. Just as a reminder to all of our attendees, this webinar will be on apexshow.com later. I sent a message about 15 minutes ago with everybody's contact information. So if you want a further discussion with Bill, Tara, Jose, or Ben, feel free to contact them. We'll have that on our website as well. And with that, thank you all for your time today, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day today.